The instructor points his staff directly at my face and says, "Demonstrate your mana output or leave this academy forever." The entire lecture hall goes silent. 200 students, every professor watching from the upper tier, and me standing in the center circle with my hands in my pockets, looking like I just woke up. I should be scared. I'm not, but I have to pretend to be. My name is Ren Ashveil. I'm the boy who was expelled from 3 lower academies for being magically deficient. The boy who scored dead last on every aptitude exam. The boy whose mana signature reads as weaker than a first-year novice's, according to every measurement crystal in existence. I got into the Valdris Royal Magic Academy on a scholars program for exceptionally late bloomers, which is basically a polite way to say charity case. That's the story everyone here believes. That's the story I need them to keep believing. Because if they ever find out the truth, if even one person here figures out what I'm actually capable of, this place won't survive the week. Instructor Kraveth hasn't moved. The staff is still leveled at my chest. He's a tall man, iron gray hair, the kind of face that's never smiled at anything in his life. He teaches advanced mana projection, a third-year course I somehow enrolled in by accident. Or that's what I told the registrar. In reality, I picked it deliberately. I wanted to see how they teach it here. Call it professional curiosity. Student Ashveil, he says. Real slow, real cold. The measurement crystal doesn't lie. Your average mana output is rated at Class F. You have no business being in this room. A few students laugh. Not cruelly, exactly. More like the automatic reaction people have when something embarrassing happens to someone they've already decided doesn't matter. There's a girl 3 rows back who doesn't laugh. She's watching me with a strange expression. Her name is Sola Verith, top of her class, daughter of one of the Empire's 5 Grand Mages. We've spoken exactly once. She told me I was sitting in her seat. I moved. Kraveth takes a step forward. The air around his staff crackles with a projection of raw mana. Clean, controlled, impressive. 3rd tier output, maybe leaning into 4th. He's showing off. For me or for the class? Probably both. A single pulse, he says. That's all I'm asking. Demonstrate you have enough mana to justify your enrollment, and I'll let this go. I look at him for a second, then I sigh. Here's the thing. Kraveth is not wrong. I genuinely shouldn't be in this class. Not because I'm weak, for the opposite reason. This is a class designed to help students develop mana output techniques for early projection work. It's foundational material. The functional equivalent for me of being asked to light a match when I'm sitting next to a dormant volcano. But I enrolled because watching how instructors frame these fundamentals tells me exactly how the Academy's entire magical philosophy is structured. It tells me what they think power is for. So far, the answer seems to be impress people and do what you're told. I reach into my pocket, pull out a mana stone, the cheap, cracked kind you can buy at any market stall, and I channel about 1% of what I actually have into it. The stone glows faintly. So faintly that a few students actually lean forward to see if it's lit at all. I let it flicker for a moment, then the stone cracks because even 1% of my real output is too much for a cracked stone to hold. But I've already pulled back before anyone notices the fracture. Kraveth looks at the faintly glowing stone, then he looks at me, then back at the stone. That, he says, is the weakest mana demonstration I have ever witnessed in 14 years of instruction. More laughter. Louder this time. I put the cracked stone back in my pocket. Thank you for the feedback, Professor, I say. He stares at me like he wants to throw me through the wall. I give him my most cooperatively helpless expression. After a long, painful pause, he turns away and goes back to the lesson. I sit back down. The student next to me, a stocky guy named Ferris who I've never spoken to, scoots his chair 6 inches away from me. As if failure might be contagious, I let him. This is day 11 at Valdris Royal Magic Academy, and so far, everything is going exactly to plan. Now let me back up and explain how I got here, because this story doesn't start at the Academy. It starts at the bottom of a crater in the Ashfeld Mountains 3 years ago, when I was 15 years old and technically dead. Not metaphorically, actually dead. Stopped heart, no pulse, 0 brain activity. The rescue team that found me recorded it in their official report. The field medic used 3 emergency revival spells before anything happened. What brought me back, according to his notes, was a spontaneous surge of unknown mana originating from the page's core. What actually happened was that I had accidentally absorbed the remnant soul force of a collapsed divine core, an artifact from the Age of Ancients that predates every magic system currently taught in any academy on the continent. The thing had been dormant for 600 years. I stumbled onto it during a solo training hike, fell into a concealed chamber, and it basically detonated inside my mana core before I could do anything about it. I woke up 2 weeks later in a field hospital with no memory of the explosion and a power level that had no category. They ran 12 different mana classification tests on me in that hospital. 3 of them broke during the testing. One examiner fainted. Another one handed me the results in a sealed envelope and asked me, very quietly, to never tell anyone what the numbers said. I didn't. I've been hiding it ever since. You might wonder why I'm hiding it. That's fair. Let me explain the world a little. In the Valdris Empire, magic users are graded from Class G to Class S. Class G is barely measurable. Class S is legendary. There are maybe 6 recorded Class S mages in all of known history, and 4 of them caused wars. The system isn't just academic, it's political. The Empire classifies, registers, and, if you're high enough, conscripts its mages. You become property of the state. You get assigned to a military unit, or a research division, or worse, to the personal guard of one of the archdukes. I had no interest in being anyone's weapon, so I learned to suppress. I studied mana compression techniques originally designed for sealing cursed artifacts, adapted them to work internally, and built myself a cage inside my own core that holds 90% of my power in a dormant state at all times. What leaks out is enough to register as Class F, weak enough to be invisible, weak enough to be dismissed, weak enough to go to school and learn things in peace. That was the plan. Except Valdris Royal Magic Academy is not a peaceful place. I realized this properly on day 14, when the ranking duels begin. Every semester, students are ranked through a formal combat assessment. It's not optional. Every student fights in rotation. Your rank determines your dormitory tier, your resource allocation, your elective access, your mentor assignment, everything. The academy runs on this hierarchy like blood through a body. Top rank gets a private suite, unlimited access to the restricted library, and a personal mentorship session with one of the Grand Mage professors. Bottom rank gets a shared bunk room, access to only the basic curriculum, and a look from every other student that suggests you should consider a different career. Guess where I'm ranked? Last. Dead last out of every enrolled student in my cohort. My assessment score was so low that the ranking crystal generated a small error message rather than a numerical value, and the administrator had to manually enter Class F, minimum qualifying threshold. I've been in the bottom bunk of dormitory block 7 for 2 weeks. My roommates have not spoken to me once. The dueling rounds begin in the outdoor arena on the academy grounds, a wide stone circle surrounded by tiered seating. The first rounds are mostly academic. Students cast, parry, deflect. The crowd watches with the comfortable superiority of people who already know how things are going to go. I watch from the far end of the bench. Sola Verith is 3 rounds into her section, and she hasn't broken a sweat. She's using a technique I recognize, fractalized mana layering, usually a 4th year skill, and she's doing it with the kind of casual precision that makes everyone else look like they're learning to walk. She beats her opponent in 40 seconds, sits back down, doesn't react when her section cheers. Then my name gets called. My opponent is a 2nd-year student named Torvin. He's ranked 14th overall, which puts him comfortably in the upper tier. He's tall, built like someone who enjoys training, and he walks into the ring with the energy of someone doing a favor for the universe by showing up. He doesn't even look at me when I enter. He's already talking to his friends at the edge of the ring. This'll be fast, someone says. The proctor raises the signal flag. Torvin turns and fires immediately. No warm-up, no posturing. Just a straight mana bolt 3rd tier output aimed directly at my chest. Good instincts, actually. Don't give the opponent time to think. I step slightly to the left. The bolt passes me by half a centimeter. Torvin blinks. He fires again. 3 bolts this time, fanned out to cut off basic evasion. Clean technique. I step right, duck slightly, and let the 3rd one clip the edge of my shoulder. Just barely. Just enough to look like I'm struggling, just enough to make it convincing. I stumble back a step. Someone in the crowd groans sympathetically. Someone else laughs. Torvin advances. He pulls his mana up for a binding technique, a paralysis web, standard issue, not particularly difficult. He launches it. I catch it, not physically. I let it land, feel it wrap around my mana field, and then I do something that should be impossible. I absorb it. Clean. The paralysis energy dissolves into my core like water into dry ground. I don't move. I don't speak. I just stand there with the binding web fully draped over me, doing absolutely nothing. Torvin stares. For exactly 3 seconds, I let the web sit. Then I let my mana pulse. Barely, just enough to destabilize it from the inside. The web shreds apart and falls off me in glowing fragments. The crowd goes absolutely silent. Torvin fires again. He's rattled now, going harder, and I can see in his expression that he's not sure what just happened. He launches a pressure wall, a 5th level technique, honestly impressive for his rank, and slams it toward me at full force. I raise one hand, just one hand. I don't even extend it fully. The pressure wall stops. Not because I blocked it with a counter technique. It stops because the ambient mana around my hand just casually absorbed the impact like it was nothing, like a wall meeting a raindrop. Torvin's jaw goes tight. He looks at my mana signature. The classification crystal near the proctor glows steadily. Class F. Nothing unusual. The readout hasn't changed at all. "What?" he says, barely audible. "Are you doing?" I tilt my head slightly. "I'm not sure," I say. "Is the duel over?" He comes at me properly then. No more careful technique. He's angry now, and angry mages make mistakes. He layers 3 spells simultaneously and drives them at me with everything he has. It's genuinely the best I've seen from anyone in this cohort. If this were a real fight, he'd be terrifying. I lean forward and tap him on the shoulder. Just tap, with one finger, with 1% of 1% of what I can actually produce. The force shockwave that comes out of that tap sends Torvin skidding backward across the full diameter of the ring and off the edge of the stone. He lands on the grass outside. The ring boundary flares. The proctor's flag snaps down. Match complete. Winner? Ashveil Ren? Nobody says anything for a long time. I look at my finger like I'm puzzled by it. Behind me, I can hear the collective sound of 200 people trying to process what they just watched. The crowd had been chattering comfortably before this. They'd had a narrative ready. Class F student enters ring, gets demolished in 30 seconds. Everyone goes home knowing how the world works. That narrative is currently lying in the grass next to Torvin. A few students look at the classification crystal near the proctor. It still reads, Class F. Nothing has changed. No output spike, no unusual reading, no indication that anything extraordinary happened. The stone is placid and blue and useless. I can see the moment they notice this, the confused glances, the small frowns, the quiet arguments breaking out in the stands. Something doesn't add up, and the people here are smart enough to feel it, even if they can't name it. Torvin is sitting up in the grass outside the ring. He's not badly hurt. I made sure of that. But he's staring at his own hands with the expression of a man whose entire professional self-image has just been renegotiated. His friends are completely silent at the ring's edge. Nobody moves to help him for a good 4 seconds, which tells you exactly how thoroughly the moment broke the social script. I turn around and walk back to the bench. The murmuring starts about 30 seconds later. By the end of the day, everyone in the academy has heard about it. By evening, there are 2 theories. The first theory is that Torvin slipped. The second theory is that something extremely strange just happened and nobody knows what to make of it. Instructor Kraveth sends me a summons to his office. I go. His office is full of bookshelves and measurement crystals and the particular smell of old academic authority. He's standing when I arrive, arms behind his back, looking at me like a puzzle he suspects is rigged. "What technique did you use?" he says. "I'm not sure, sir. You absorbed a paralysis web. It felt like it just fell off." Ashveil. His voice is very controlled. A paralysis web does not just fall off. Not at your classification level. Not at twice your classification level. He steps forward. I've been teaching here for 14 years. I know what I saw. I appreciate that, Professor. I'm just not sure I can explain it. He looks at me for a long time. Something shifts in his face. Not suspicion exactly. More like the early stages of a thought he doesn't want to have yet. You'll report to Advanced Combat Assessment next week, he says finally. That's not a request. I nod and excuse myself. That's a problem. Advanced Combat Assessment involves direct measurement by the Grand Mage Panel. They don't use basic classification crystals. They use the Valdris Arcane Scope, a high-sensitivity instrument that can detect suppressed mana signatures. I've dealt with basic crystals before. The scope is different. If they run a full-spectrum scan on me, my suppression technique might not hold. And if my real classification shows up on that scope, everything unravels. I have a week to figure out how to handle it. I spend day one just thinking. I sit in my bottom bunk with my roommates pretending I don't exist, and I go through every piece of information I have about Imperial measurement technology. The arcane scope was constructed under the Second Emperor's reign, roughly 240 years ago. It was designed to survey battlefields and identify enemy mages by classification during wartime. It was never meant to function as a precise scientific instrument. It was meant to answer one simple question: is this person a threat? High sensitivity on the upper end of the scale, less precision on the lower. That asymmetry is important. I spend day 2 in the sick library, reading anything publicly available on mana classification theory. Most of it is elementary, but buried in a footnote in a 30-year-old academic paper, I find a reference to the scope's construction specifications, specifically to its calibration ceiling. I read that footnote 4 times. Then I close the book, sit back, and allow myself exactly 10 seconds of something close to relief. There's a way through this, but I need information I can't access from the public shelves. The restricted library has 3 texts on the scope's construction and limitations. Detailed ones, written by the mages who built the updated version currently used by the Academy. I can't access the restricted library. My rank is too low. This is a problem until I remember that Sola Verith has unrestricted access, and I've noticed her studying in the East Reading Room every evening from the 7th bell to the 9th. Same table, same chair, same slightly distant expression, like she's somewhere else even when she's right in front of you. I ask her if she'll help me. She looks at me like I've suggested something mildly offensive. "You're the Class F student from the dueling ring," she says. "Yes, the one who knocked Torvin off the ring with a single finger." "That's being exaggerated." She stares at me. She has the kind of stare that feels like being read. "What do you want from the restricted library?" "Technical texts on the arcane scope, construction theory, measurement parameters." "Why?" "Academic interest." She is quiet for a moment. Then, "You're going to need a better lie than that." I pause. I look at her. I make a decision. "I have a mana classification I'd prefer the Grand Mage panel not to see," I say. It's technically honest. It's also the smallest version of the truth. She doesn't answer right away. She looks at me in a new way. Not suspicious. Calculating. Like someone reassessing the value of a piece on a board. "If I help you," she says slowly, "I want to know what you really are. That's not a trade I'm ready to make. I'll owe you a significant favor," I say instead. "One you can cash in whenever you need it." She considers this for exactly 4 seconds. Then she nods once, stands up, and walks toward the restricted section without another word. I follow. She finds the texts in 20 minutes. We sit across from each other at a reading table, and I go through them quietly while she pretends to read her own material and actually watches me more than the page. I find what I need by the 8th bell. The scope has a maximum detection ceiling. It was designed during an era when Class S mages were the highest known category. Anything above that theoretical ceiling registers as a sensor error and defaults to the last valid reading. My suppression technique doesn't just need to hold. I need to let a small controlled amount of real power bleed through. Just enough to register as something real, something specific, something interesting, but not catastrophic. I need to appear as a hidden talent, not a walking extinction event. I spend the next 4 nights adjusting my suppression architecture. It's meticulous work. Exhausting, actually. Like performing surgery on yourself in complete silence while pretending to sleep in a room with 3 roommates. But by the 5th morning, I have it calibrated. The Advanced Combat Assessment Day arrives cold and overcast. The Grand Mage panel consists of 4 professors, including Kravith, and 1 observer from the Imperial Registry. The observer wears gray and says nothing and takes notes. I do not like that person at all. The other students go first. There are 6 of us flagged for full assessment. The panel watches, measures, annotates. When my turn comes, the room has the specific kind of quiet that forms around things people expect to be disappointing. I step onto the assessment platform. The arcane scope activates. It's a beautiful piece of engineering, honestly. A lattice of crystalline sensors designed to read the full spectrum of a mage's core output. I can feel it scanning. I keep my breathing steady. I let exactly 10% of my true output breathe past the suppression wall. The crystals flicker. The panel leans forward. The scope reads, calculates, triangulates. The output classification that appears on the display panel is Class B, upper tier. There is a very sharp silence. Kravith's expression changes. The registry observer looks up from her notes for the first time. One of the other professors actually stands up from his chair. Class B, upper tier, in a student who has been testing as Class F. One of the panel professors immediately questions the equipment. They run the scan again. Same result. They swap out one crystal array. Same result. They run a third pass with a secondary scope unit they have to retrieve from storage. Same result. This reading indicates severe mana suppression, the professor says carefully. Student Ashveil, are you deliberately concealing your classification? I look at him with the most genuinely confused expression I've ever manufactured. I don't know how to suppress mana, Professor. Is something wrong with the equipment? Kravith's eyes narrow so tight they almost vanish. He knows, not specifically, but he knows something is off. That man is sharper than he looks. The registry observer puts down her pen and looks at me directly for the first time. We'll need to schedule an individual evaluation, she says. Her voice is completely flat, professional, the kind of voice that belongs to someone who processes anomalies for a living. Of course, I say pleasantly. I walk out of the assessment room and immediately calculate how much time I have before this situation becomes unfixable. Not much. Whatever I'm going to do next, I need to do it soon. Because Class B, upper tier, at an age where most mages are Class D at best, is going to draw exactly the kind of attention I've spent 3 years trying to avoid. The Imperial Registry doesn't just catalog anomalies, it reports them. And when the Empire gets a report about an unprecedented young mage hiding in a charity scholarship program at Valdris Royal Academy, the people who come to investigate won't be professors. They'll be soldiers. I'm sitting on the steps outside the assessment hall, thinking about my next move when Sola Verith appears next to me. She sits down without asking. She looks at the empty courtyard ahead of us. Class B, she says. That's what the scope said. You've been testing as Class F for 2 weeks. Remarkable equipment, the arcane scope. A long pause. What? She says very quietly. Did the scope actually find Ren? I look at her. She's looking straight ahead. Her profile is completely still, like she's already decided not to be surprised. Like she already suspects the answers is something that can't be said out loud in a hallway. She's not wrong. I told you I'd owe you a favor, I say. I'm collecting it now. I'm quiet for a moment. Then I say, the scope found exactly what I wanted it to find. She turns her head slowly and looks at me. There's a very long pause. How much, she says, are you hiding? I don't answer. I don't have to. Because at that exact moment, the far end of the courtyard crackles with the discharge of a high-output combat spell. The Academy's emergency alarm bells start ringing, and 3 figures in Imperial gray drop from the sky on mana burst descent platforms, landing with enough force to crack the flagstones. They're not soldiers, they're mage hunters. The Empire's specialized retrieval unit for unregistered mages. The best trackers in the world. They have a direct authorization seal on their collars and enhancement arrays on their hands. They don't announce themselves. They don't knock. One of them points straight at me. The Academy grounds fall completely silent except for the echo of those alarm bells. Sola is on her feet. I'm already standing. My hands are in my pockets. I'm very calm. On the outside. On the inside, the suppression wall I've been tainting for 3 years is vibrating like a bell that's been struck too hard. Because the scan they're preparing to run, I can feel the preparation energy from here. The specific harmonic of an Imperial-grade deep scan will not stop at Class B. It will not stop at Class C. It's going to go all the way down. and what it finds at the bottom is going to change everything about this situation. There are students at windows all around the courtyard. I can see their faces in the glass. Pale, wide-eyed, the expressions of people watching something they know they're going to remember. Sola is standing very still beside me. I can feel her doing the math. She's fast. She's already put more pieces together than anyone else in this place. I can tell by the way she doesn't look surprised. She looks like someone bracing. The lead hunter looks at me with the professional patience of someone who does this every day. "Student Ashveil," he says, "please come with us," and I smile. Not a big smile, small. The kind that comes out when you've already decided something. I've decided. I'm not running. Running would confirm everything they suspect and make the problem permanent. I'm not complying. Walking into an Imperial evaluation facility means walking into the kind of suppression technology that doesn't care how good your concealment is. They'd have me in chains by morning. There's a third option. Something I've never done in public before. Something I promised myself I would only do as a last resort. I'm going to let them feel the edge of what I am. Just the edge. The lead hunter takes one step forward, and I let go of exactly 10% of my suppression wall. Just 10%. The air cracks. Every mana crystal within 40 meters shatters simultaneously. Not explosively, but like they've been asked a question they can't answer. Clean fracture lines, no heat. No sound except the crystalline snapping of something that was never built to handle this. The flagstones under the hunter's feet fracture in a perfect radius, each crack radiating outward from where I'm standing like a diagram someone drew to explain pressure. The Academy's ambient mana protection field, the one that's been passively running for 200 years, flickers. Actually flickers. A thing I was told was physically impossible, and then snaps back online with an audible strain that every mage in the courtyard can feel in their bones. The 3 mage hunters stop walking. Every single one of them. For a moment, nobody moves. The lead hunter's eyes sweep across the shattered crystals, the cracked stone, the still straining protection field. His 2 subordinates have instinctively shifted into defensive formation without a conscious decision. That's pure trained reflex, the kind that fires when something registers as genuinely dangerous. I can see their enhancement arrays cycling. They're preparing for a combat response. They look at each other. Then they look at me. The lead hunter's professional calm is still there. But underneath it, for just a fraction of a second, something else crosses his face. Fear. Real fear. I put my hands back in my pockets. I think, I say pleasantly, there might be a misunderstanding. None of them answer right away. The courtyard is absolutely still. Up in the windows, I can see students frozen in place. I can see Kravith standing on the second-floor observation walkway with his arms at his sides, watching me with an expression I've never seen on him before. Not anger, not suspicion, something quieter than both. The lead hunter exhales slowly. Then carefully he says, "We'll need to escalate this to a senior authority." "Of course," I say. "I'll be right here." He takes out a relay crystal and steps back to make a call. His subordinates don't move. They've stopped trying to look casual. One of them hasn't blinked in about 15 seconds. And Sola, beside me very quietly, says, "Ren?" I look at her. "That," she says, voice low, barely a breath, "was 10%, wasn't it?" She's not asking. I don't answer. She stares at the cracked flagstones. Then she looks back at me. And for the first time since I've known her, she looks like she doesn't have all the information she needs to form a complete thought. Sola Vareth, top of her class, daughter of a grand mage, the girl who has never been surprised by anything in her life, looks genuinely, completely uncertain. "What are you?" she whispers. And somewhere across the courtyard, the relay crystal in the lead hunter's hand glows bright red. Not the standard blue of an acknowledgement signal. Red means a direct Imperial priority line. Red means someone very senior is now involved. The hunter looks at the crystal, then he looks at me. His expression shifts one more time, into something that is not fear and not professionalism. It's closer to the look a man gets when he realizes the situation he walked into is bigger than his rank. "We're going to be here a while," he says, and I smile again. Because I've been hiding for 3 years. I've been cautious and careful and invisible and small. Let instructors embarrass me in lecture halls and ranked dead last and slept in a bottom bunk that smells like old study notes. I've been patient because patience was the plan. But right now, with Imperial Mage Hunters standing in cracked flagstones and a 200-year-old protection field still humming with strain overhead, I'm starting to think the plan might need updating. The lead hunter's relay crystal glows redder, and from somewhere above the clouds, I hear the low vibration of descent platforms. More than 3 this time. Many more. They really did send reinforcements. I take a slow breath. 10% was enough to stop 3 hunters in their tracks. The question is, what happens when they send enough people that 10% isn't enough anymore? And what happens to this academy? To these students? To Sola standing next to me? To Kraveth watching from the walkway? When the answer to that question involves the other 90, the reinforcements arrive in waves. First wave, 6 hunters, dropping from descent platforms with the synchronized precision of people who've done this 100 times. They land in a tight arc around the original 3, completing a perimeter. Standard containment formation. I've read about it in a tactical manual I found in the restricted library 6 days ago, which tells you something about how I spend my evenings. Second wave. 2 more, these ones carrying equipment cases. Long, flat, the kind used to transport suppression arrays, not personal enhancement arrays. Building scale suppression technology, the kind designed to neutralize mages who can't be neutralized by conventional means. Third wave, 1 person, no equipment. No weapon I can see. She lands in the center of the formation, and the hunters around her shift, subtly, collectively, like planets adjusting for a new gravitational source. She's wearing the gray uniform of the Imperial Hunter Corps, but her collar carries a different insignia. Not a retrieval unit seal, something older, a rank I recognize from historical texts but have never seen in person. Grand Hunter Commander. She's middle-aged, compact, with the kind of face that stopped being readable sometime in the previous decade. Her mana signature is dense and deliberately opaque. Someone who knows how to hide power, which means she knows how to find it in others. She scans the courtyard with the professional calm of someone who has walked into worse situations before breakfast, and considers this one moderately interesting. She looks at the cracked flagstones. She looks at the shattered crystals. She looks at the Academy's protection field, still humming, with visible strain overhead, which has now been doing that for approximately 4 minutes, and has stopped being the kind of thing anyone can pretend not to notice. Then she looks at me. I put my hands in my pockets. She walks toward me at a pace that suggests she's in no particular hurry, which is more unsettling than if she'd come fast. The lead hunter falls back to let her through. He looks quietly grateful to have the situation become someone else's problem. Student Ashveil, she says. Her voice is low and even. I'm Commander Adris. I'm here to facilitate a voluntary evaluation under Imperial Registry Protocol. Good morning, I say. A pause. She tilts her head very slightly, like she's recalibrating something. The evaluation will take place at the Regional Registry Office. You'll be accompanied by a full escort team. You have the right to request an academic observer from the Academy staff. She says all of this in the same tone someone might use to describe the weather. We'd like to begin transit immediately. I appreciate the courtesy of the phrasing, I say. But I think we both know that's not quite what's being offered. Her expression doesn't change. No, she agrees. It isn't. Beside me, I can feel Sola doing something very controlled with her breathing. She's still standing at my left shoulder. She hasn't moved since the hunters landed. I haven't asked her to stay, and she hasn't decided to leave, which is a data point I file away for later. I look at Commander Adris. I look at the suppression array cases the equipment carriers have set down without opening yet. I look at the 8 hunters arranged in a perimeter around me with the careful professional distance of people who saw what happened to the flagstones and have no interest in being closer when the next thing happens. Then I look at the windows. Faces everywhere. Students, professors, staff. The entire academy has found a window. Some of them are at the open ones, and the early morning air is cold enough that I can see their breath. I notice, somewhat distantly, that no one has gone to get breakfast. I run the calculation. If I go with Commander Adris, I walk into an Imperial evaluation facility, carrying a suppression architecture I've spent 3 years building, facing technology designed specifically to break it. Best case, they get Class B and spend weeks arguing about the reading, while I look cooperative and unthreatening. Realistic case, they push harder than the Academy panel did, my calibration cracks, and the number they find has no category in any system the Empire uses to classify human beings. After that, I stop being a person who made interesting readings and start being a strategic asset with a registry number. If I don't go with Commander Adris, us Edge Mage Hunters, and one Grand Hunter Commander attempt to physically compel me, that ends the Academy, possibly the surrounding district. I've been very careful for 3 years not to find out the exact radius of what 10% can do when it stops being polite. There's a third option. I've been thinking about it since the relay crystal went red. I need to buy time, and I need to do it in a way that changes the shape of the problem without blowing anything up. That means I need leverage. Not physical leverage, I have too much of that, and it's exactly what they want me to use. I need a different kind. I turn to Sola. She's already looking at me. She's had the same amount of time, I have to run the same calculation, and I can see in her face that she's reached a similar conclusion by a different route. She's the daughter of a Grand Mage. She knows exactly what voluntary evaluation means for a mage who can make the Academy protection field flicker. I need that favor, I say quietly. She looks at me for exactly 1 second. Then she steps forward past me toward Commander Adris, and she does something that, based on what I know about Sola Vareth, must cost her a significant amount of something she doesn't usually spend. She lies. Commander, she says, and her voice carries the particular clarity of someone who has grown up watching powerful people speak to other powerful people, confident, unhurried. I need to inform you that student Ashveil is currently participating in an authorized research program under the academic authority of Grand Mage Vareth. Any evaluation or relocation requires advance notification of the Grand Mage's office per Imperial Registry Protocol 7, subsection 4. She doesn't look at me. She doesn't hesitate. She delivers this entirely fabricated piece of information with the serene certainty of someone who has never said a false thing in her life and intends to keep it that way indefinitely. Commander Adris is quiet for a moment. Grand Mage Vareth's research program, she says. Yes, and you are? Sola Vareth, his daughter. A brief, precise pause. I can provide the authorization documentation. It will take some time to retrieve. The Grand Mage's office is particular about transmission security. Another pause, longer this time. Adris is calculating too. She's not a fool. Nobody reaches Grand Hunter Commander by being a fool. She knows this might be a delay tactic. She also knows that if she proceeds without verification and Grand Mage Vareth is genuinely involved, she will have committed a protocol violation against one of the 5 most powerful people in the Empire. The Mage Hunter Corps has a long institutional memory for the last time someone did that. We'll verify the documentation, Adris says finally. Student Ashveil will remain on Academy grounds pending verification. He will be monitored. She looks at me, continuously. Of course, I say. I'm not going anywhere. She holds my gaze for a moment. Then she gives a short, precise nod, turns back to her team, and begins organizing them into a watch perimeter. The suppression array cases stay closed. I take note of exactly where they're positioned. Sola turns and walks back toward the main building without looking at me. After a moment, I follow. She doesn't say anything until we're inside, around a corner, through a door, and in a small reading antechamber off the east corridor that I don't think gets much foot traffic at this hour. Then she turns around, and her expression is one I haven't seen before, controlled, but with something underneath it that might be adrenaline, or might be fury, or might be both at once. That protocol doesn't exist, she says. I know, I made it up. In front of a Grand Hunter Commander. You did it very convincingly. Ren. She says my name with a precision that suggests she'd prefer to use it as a projectile. My father is going to find out I claimed his academic authority without asking him. That is not a small problem for me. I know, I say again. I'm sorry. I needed time and you were the only person standing next to me with the right last name. She looks at me for a long moment. Something shifts. Not forgiveness exactly. More like the decision to table the anger until the practical problems are solved. How much time did that buy us? She asks. The documentation verification will take at least half a day, if she's being careful. More if she wants to confirm through official channels. I pause. Your father will know within the hour. He'll confirm it to protect my credibility, she says slowly, working it out as she says it. He won't make me a liar in front of an Imperial officer. He'll be furious, but he'll confirm it. She stops. And then he'll want to know why. Yes. And then he'll come here. Almost certainly, she stares at me. You've just managed to buy time and summon Grand Mage Vareth simultaneously. The summoning was going to happen anyway, I say. The Hunter's red relay crystal guaranteed that. Once the Imperial Registry gets a Class B anomaly reading on someone who's been testing as Class F, and 3 of their hunters report a mana event that cracked stone and broke every crystal in a 40-meter radius, your father gets notified automatically. He's on the notification list for anomalies above a certain threshold. I checked. I pause. He was coming regardless. I just made sure he's coming to vouch for you, rather than to assess a threat. Sola is quiet for a moment. Then, very quietly, you checked the Grand Mage notification list. It's in the public registry documentation. Nobody reads the public registry documentation. I've read most of it. She looks at me with an expression I can't quite categorize. Not suspicion. Something more like the adjustment you make when you realize you've been thinking about a problem in the wrong scale. What are you doing? She says, and she doesn't mean the immediate situation. She means something larger. Studying, I say. Mostly. Ren, I'll tell you more when there's time. I move toward the door. Right now, I have about 6 hours before the verification window closes, and I need to do something in the crystal network before the suppression arrays get unpacked. She follows me into the corridor. What do you need to do in the crystal network? The hunters are going to run a trace on the mana event from the courtyard. Standard procedure. They'll reconstruct the output signature from residual energy in the ambient crystals and use it as a fingerprint to map my full classification. I glance at her. I need to make sure the crystals give them an interesting but inaccurate picture. She absorbs this. You're going to falsify your own mana trail. I'm going to suggest a more flattering alternative. That's the same thing. It really isn't. Falsifying would mean replacing real data. What I'm doing is introducing calibrated interference that shifts the residual frequency slightly. The reading won't be wrong. It'll be incomplete. Like a sentence with a word missing. She looks at me for a long moment as we walk. You've done this before. I don't answer, which is itself an answer. The Academy's crystal network runs through the walls. Literally, embedded in the stone at construction, maintained by the facilities staff, mostly invisible to the students who walk past it every day. It serves as the backbone for everything from the protection field to the classroom measurement arrays, to the ambient lighting in the senior residences. If you know the network's architecture, and you have a sufficiently precise mana touch, you can introduce patterns into the residual energy the same way you'd leave marks in wet plaster. Gently, deliberately, and exactly where you want them. I spent 2 days last week mapping the architecture. The facilities documentation is in the public library if you know which maintenance filing to request. Nobody requests the maintenance filings. I work for 3 hours, moving through the corridors at a pace that looks like aimless study hall wandering. Sola walks with me. She doesn't ask questions while I work, which I appreciate. What I'm doing requires a level of precision that doesn't leave much room for conversation. Each adjustment is a fraction of a % of my suppressed output, channeled into a crystal relay point for exactly long enough to deposit a trace signature before I move on. It's less like casting and more like drawing. Slow, deliberate, each line placed for a reason. What the hunters will find when they run their trace. A mana signature consistent with a Class B mage who has been suppressing naturally. The kind of thing that happens with certain rare developmental conditions where a mage's body instinctively throttles output to protect an immature core. It's a real phenomenon. It happens maybe once a generation. It explains the gap between my classification crystal readings and the scope results. It explains the dueling ring performance. Extraordinary control as a side effect of years of involuntary suppression. It does not explain the flagstone fractures, but those can be attributed to suppression release, which is also a real and documented phenomenon. The story I'm building is, I'm a natural suppressor, not hiding anything, not a threat. Medically interesting. Academically relevant. Best handled by the Grand Mage's research office, and not by the Hunter Corps. It's not a perfect story. Kraveth won't believe it. Possibly Adris won't believe it either. But it doesn't need to be believed. It needs to be plausible enough to buy more time, and it needs to be complicated enough that the bureaucratic apparatus around it, the documentation, the verification procedures, the interdepartmental authority questions, creates enough friction to keep me in the academy and out of an evaluation room for as long as possible. I'm on my 4th relay junction when Sola says, quietly, "Do you know what my father is going to do when he gets here? He'll want to evaluate me himself. His personal scan is more precise than the scope." I know. She glances at me sideways. Are you going to fool it? A long pause. I finish the adjustment at the junction and move on before I answer. No, I say, not entirely. She takes this in. So he'll find something. He'll find something I'm willing to let him find. I turn a corner. The question is what he does with it afterward. He'll try to claim you, she says. It's not an accusation. It's just the truth, delivered flatly. That's what my father does with things he finds valuable. He protects them, and in exchange, they belong to him. I know. And you're going to refuse. Yes. Another long pause. We're near the north wing now, close to the last relay junction I need. The corridors are quiet. Most students are still watching the courtyard from the upper windows, or gathered in small, anxious clusters in the common rooms. The academy has the specific atmospheric pressure of a building full of people waiting for something to happen. Can I ask you something? Sola says. Yes. Why come here at all? If you've spent 3 years hiding, why enroll in an academy? Why not stay invisible? It's a fair question. I've thought about it. I have several answers, and only some of them are ones I'm ready to say out loud. Because invisible isn't the same as safe, I say. The Empire has been looking for me, or for whatever I am, since the Ashveil incident. Staying hidden in the mountains doesn't stop them from looking. It just means I'm alone when they find me. I pause at the last junction. I needed to understand the system I'm inside, how they measure things, what they can detect, what they think power is for. You can't navigate something you don't understand. So the academy is research. Everything is research. She's quiet for a moment while I finish the last adjustment. When I pull back, the network has a new story to tell. Subtle, layered, consistent, and almost entirely not true in the ways that matter most. You're very calm, she says. For someone with 9 mage hunters in the courtyard. There are 11 now, I say. 2 more came in the last hour. They've positioned on the east and west gates. She blinks. How do you know that? I tap one of the relay crystals on the wall. The network knows where every large mana signature in the grounds is located. I've been reading it while I work. She looks at the crystal. Then she looks at me. 11 hunters, she says. And the suppression arrays are still in their cases, I say. They're waiting for the commander's order. She's a careful person. She wants the verification to come back before she escalates. My father will arrive before the verification comes back. Yes. You planned that. I don't answer. She looks at me for a very long moment. Outside, distantly, I can hear the wind picking up across the courtyard, and beneath it, the faint harmonic of the Academy protection field still running at elevated strain. It's been doing that for 4 hours. The facility's staff must be having a difficult morning. I'm going to help you, Sola says. She says it like she's made a decision rather than discovered a feeling. Not because of the favor. Because I want to know what you actually are, and the only way I'm going to find out is if you stay out of an Imperial evaluation room. She pauses. But I want you to understand something. What? My father is not a villain. He's not going to hurt you. What he's going to do is worse than that. He's going to offer you something genuinely good and want something fair in return. And the problem with that is that fair exchanges with powerful people have a way of becoming obligations that outlast the original agreement. I look at her. There's something precise in how she said that. Not abstract, personal. I'll keep that in mind, I say. She nods once. And then, because Sola Verith is not a person who lets silences become comfortable, if there's still useful information to extract. What do you know about the divine cores? The corridor is empty. The question hangs in the air. Why? I ask. It's because something just cracked the Academy protection field, she says. That field was constructed by 7 grand mages working in concert. It has survived 200 years and 3 attempted breaches, and you destabilized it with 10% of whatever you actually are. She holds my gaze. The only recorded examples of a mage interacting with a foundational ward at that level are in the ancient archives, and every single one of them involves the Divine Core network. I look at her. She looks back. My father's research library, she says quietly, has 4 texts that aren't publicly available anywhere in the Empire. I've read 2 of them. They're about the Age of Ancients, about the cores. A pause. One of them has a chapter on what happens when a core ruptures in proximity to a living mage's unformed core. She holds my gaze. It doesn't describe survival as a possible outcome. Somewhere in the distance, I hear a new sound, not the wind, not the protection field, something else. The low, resonant thrum of a long-range descent platform. Not the quick, personal units the hunters used. Something larger. Something that doesn't need to hurry, because it knows the destination will wait. We both hear it. Sola closes her eyes for exactly 1 second. He's early, she says. Traffic conditions over the northern routes must have been favorable. Ren? She opens her eyes. He's going to read you the moment he's within range. You have about 4 minutes. I know. I straighten up from the wall, put my hands back in my pockets, start walking toward the courtyard entrance. Are you coming? She catches up with me in 2 steps. The things you said, she says as we walk, about understanding the system, about research, a beat. That's not the whole reason you came here. She's right. It isn't. But the platform is getting louder, and Grand Mage Vareth will be in range in 3 minutes, and I need to be standing in the courtyard with 11 Mage Hunters players watching when he arrives. Being seen choosing to meet him openly is the first move in the negotiation I'm about to have. No, I say. It's not the whole reason. She doesn't push further. We step out into the cold morning air. The platform descends through the overcast and parks itself 8 feet above the flagstones with the particular arrogance of expensive enchant work. Grand Mage Vareth steps off it without waiting for it to fully land. Just drops the last few feet and touches ground with the ease of someone to whom gravity is a professional courtesy rather than a physical law. He's older than I expected. The portraits in the public records are decades out of date, and they don't convey the particular quality his presence has in person, which is less like meeting a powerful mage and more like walking into a room where the light is slightly different from every other room you've ever been in. His mana signature is not suppressed, not even slightly. He wears it the way other people wear expensive clothes, deliberately, as a statement. Class S, real, unhidden, and clearly aware of the effect it has on everyone around him. Everyone around him, at this moment, is 11 Mage Hunters, 1 Grand Hunter Commander, approximately 200 students is in every available window, and me. Commander Adris steps forward. They exchange a look that contains about 15 sentences of subtext. He gives her a single nod. She steps back. The dynamic of the courtyard rearranges itself around the new gravitational center. He turns and looks at his daughter. Sola meets his gaze. Something passes between them. Too fast and too private for me to read. His expression doesn't change. Then he looks at me. Here's the thing about being scanned by a Grand Mage. It doesn't feel like the scope. The scope is an instrument. It measures. What Vareth does is closer to being looked at by something that has been looking at Chidges for 60 years, and has developed, in that time, an intuition about what it's seeing that exceeds any instrument's precision. He looks at me for about 4 seconds. In those 4 seconds, I maintain my calibration. I let the same percent I showed the hunters breathe at the top of my suppression wall, steady and controlled, not performing weakness, not performing strength, just being what I've chosen to show as clearly as I can. His expression doesn't change. Then he says, to no one in particular, I see. The temperature in the courtyard drops approximately 2 degrees. This is not magic. It's just the effect of a man who has spent 60 years being the most powerful person in any given room, deciding to make that fact ambient. He walks toward me. The hunters don't move. Adris doesn't move. Sola doesn't move. Nobody moves except him. He stops at a distance that's close enough to be personal and far enough to be careful, deliberate. He's calibrated his approach the same way I've calibrated my output. We are, I realize, doing the same thing, performing something precise and controlled while the real thing stays behind our eyes. I find that unexpectedly interesting. You're the Ashveil boy, he says. Yes, sir, Ren Ashveil's son. I keep my expression still. He said my mother's name like he knew it, like he'd been waiting for a reason to say it out loud. I file that away. I file everything about this moment away. Yes, I say. He looks at me for another moment. Then, quietly, so only I can hear. The reading I'm getting from you is not what you want me to have. No, I agree. Just as quietly. But it's not nothing. No. A pause. Something shifts in his face, not softening exactly. More like the particular attention of someone solving a problem they find genuinely difficult. Walk with me, he says. Not a request, but not an order either. Something in between, the kind of statement made by someone who expects the world to reorganize itself around his preferences and is usually right. I walk with him. We cross the courtyard, past the hunters, past the cracked flagstones, toward the far colonnade. I hear Sola exhale behind me. I hear the soft crackle of Adris giving orders to her team in a low voice. I hear the Academy protection field humming overhead, still running hard. The entire building braced, like something waiting for an impact that may or may not come. Vareth doesn't speak for a moment. We reach the colonnade and he stops, half facing the courtyard, half facing me. The Hunter Corps has a classification reading of Class B upper tier, he says. They believe you're a natural suppressor with a rare developmental condition. The documentation in the network supports it. He pauses. I don't believe it. That's your prerogative, sir. What I believe, he says, is that you are something considerably more unusual, and that you have spent significant effort constructing a situation where no one can prove it without your cooperation. He looks at me sidelong. I've met 3 people in my lifetime who could do what you just did to that protection field. 2 of them are dead. The 3rd is someone I would rather not discuss in an open courtyard. I wait. I'm going to tell Commander Adris that her team's classification reading was accurate and that my research program documentation is in order, he says. She'll stand down. The Academy will return to something resembling normal. He turns to look at me directly, and you and I are going to have a conversation privately about what you actually are and what it would mean for both of us if I offered you my house's protection. I appreciate the directness, I say. I appreciate that you haven't lied to me yet. He turns back toward the courtyard. Come to my office tonight. 7 bells. Bring whatever you're willing to tell me. He walks back toward Adris. I stay in the colonnade for a moment. Tonight, 7 bells. He's given me the rest of the day. Hours that I need, time that I can use, space to think. He's also told me clearly, and without saying it, that he knows more about me than he's shown. That the mention of my mother's name wasn't accidental. That Class S doesn't fully capture what he is either, in ways that might matter. I put my hands in my pockets. Behind me, through the colonnade pillars, I can hear the sounds of the Academy beginning to exhale. Students in windows. Professors on walkways. The specific ambient noise of a building full of people returning to normal activity, each of them carrying a slightly different version of the story they just watched and not quite sure yet what it means. The hunters are regrouping. The suppression arrays are being packed. Commander Adris is having a conversation with Grand Mage Vareth that I can see but not hear, and whatever he's telling her, she's receiving it with the professional neutrality of someone accepting a result she didn't expect. Sola appears beside me. She's been watching her father. I've been watching her watching him. He confirmed it, she says, to Adris. He said the documentation is in order. I heard. He lied for you. A pause. My father does not lie for people. He lied for the situation, I say. There's a difference. She's quiet. Then, he said your mother's name. Yes, he knew her. It seems like it. She looks at me. I look at her. Out in the courtyard, the hunters are lifting off, one by one, on their descent platforms. Commander Adris is the last to go. She looks at me once more before she ascends. A long, level look that means something, and then she's above the cloud cover and gone. The Academy protection field settles. I can feel it happening, a slow, gradual reduction in strain as the field recalibrates to its normal passive state. Somewhere in the walls, the crystal network hums and ticks. In the windows, Faces disappear back into classrooms. Normal, or something shaped like it. Tonight, Sola says, his office. You're going to refuse whatever he offers you. Yes, he won't forgive it. I know. She nods once. Not approval exactly. More like acknowledgement. The recognition that sometimes the right choice and the comfortable choice are not the same. And the person in front of her has clearly made their peace with that distinction. I'll be outside the office, she says, in case you need a corroborating witness for whatever story you tell him. She walks back inside. I stay in the colonnade for another minute, watching the courtyard empty, the cracked flagstones, the scorched ring where the crystals shattered, evidence of 10% written in stone. From here you can see most of the upper walkways. I scan them out of habit. Kravith is still on the second floor walkway. He's been there this entire time. He watched the whole thing. The hunters, Adris, Vareth, me. He has a small notebook in his hand. He's writing something in it. I think about what I know of Kravith. 14 years at this academy. Sharp, careful, the kind of person who notices things and records them and files them somewhere specific. The kind of person who sends reports. To whom, though? That's the question I don't have an answer to yet. He looks up from his notebook. Our eyes meet across the courtyard. He holds my gaze for 1 beat, 2 beats, 3. Then he goes back to writing. I put my hands in my pockets and go inside to start preparing for 7 bells. In the dormitory, while my roommates are still out processing the morning's events, in whatever way second-year students process, watching 9 Mage Hunters deploy over breakfast, I sit on my bottom bunk and do something I haven't done since Ashveil. I count, not out loud, internally. I lower myself into the suppression architecture and I check every layer, every seal, every carefully maintained boundary. 10% is the edge I showed today. 90% sits below that, dormant, heavy, the thing that has no category. I check each stratum with the focused attention of an architect walking a structure before a storm. Everything holds. I knew it would. But it's important to check. I'm going to be in Grand Mage Vareth's office in 11 hours. He is going to offer me something I can't accept, and he is going to scan me again. More carefully, with more time, and with 60 years of experience that I cannot fool the way I've fooled every instrument the Academy owns. He'll find Class B. He'll see the suppression. He'll know there's more below it. He won't know how much more. And in the middle of that conversation, in the room, in the moment, I need to decide what to tell him about my mother, because he mentioned her name for a reason, and reasons like that have histories attached to them. I exhale slowly. In my pocket, the cracked mana stone from Kravith's lecture shifts when I move. I took it out after the courtyard, checked the fracture pattern, put it back. The crack runs straight through the center. It happened when I channeled 1% of what I have into it on day 11. 11 days. 1%. And the stone broke. Tonight, I'm going to sit across from one of the 5 most powerful mages in the Empire, and I'm going to tell him something true enough to be useful and incomplete enough to be safe, and I'm going to refuse an offer of protection from the man who apparently knew my mother. And then I'm going to come back to this dormitory and sleep in this bottom bunk that smells like old study notes, and tomorrow I'm going to go to class. And I'm going to get the weakest evaluation marks in the cohort, and everything is going to continue as planned. I close my eyes. Outside, I can hear the academy returning to its ordinary rhythms. Bells, footsteps, the distant clatter of the dining hall. Someone 3 bunks over has left a candle burning that I can feel through the ambient mana field like a single warm note in an otherwise cold room. The protection field hums overhead, finally back to its normal frequency. 200 years, that field has been running. I gave it 4 hours of genuine difficulty with 10%. I don't think about the other 90. There's no productive direction that thought goes. Instead, I think about what Vareth said. I've met 3 people in my lifetime who could do what you just did. 2 of them are dead. He said it like a caution, like information I might need. He also said it like someone who knew the third person well enough to not want to say the name in public. I lie back in the bunk. I look at the springs of the mattress above me, which are exactly as uncomfortable to contemplate as they are to sleep beneath. I think about my mother. I think about what it means that Vareth said her name like he'd been waiting for a reason. I think about tonight, 7 bells. I'm already deciding what to bring.